Catch Outdoors. I'm your host, Captain Rob Modies. This podcast is about living and playing in the great outdoors, especially down this way in the southern region of the continental U.S., the Florida Keys. Catch Outdoors is hosted by Spotify, also brought to you by your favorite podcast network. So kick back and get a taste of my Florida. This week's episode of Catch Outdoors is number 120, titled Talk About Fishing. Yes, that's the subject this week. A little hint. What do you do when you can't go fishing? You talk about it. But first, I want to start out with this quote, and then we'll get into the newsy part of this. As you all know, that's what I usually do. So here's the quote. I have never cared about setting world records or filling my boat with fish, or for that matter, even catching fish. I go for the experience of spending 6 hours in the arms of the ocean, never thinking of a single thing except chasing fish. Jimmy Buffett. I found that the other day, and I'm like, wow, that's just so apropos for me. I really, really like that. So, and of course, when I saw it was a Jimmy Buffett, I had to include it, So, all right, let's get on with the newsy part now. The weather report. An outlook for the upcoming week here in the Keys, along with tide and moon information. Always handy for you fishing type folks. The week ahead, temperature-wise, it looks really good. However, they are calling for another cold front and then another cold front. Yeah, it's whatever. Yeah, we just had this is Sunday, and last night we got bombed on Saturday night late. Lightning, thunder. It didn't hit anywhere near as bad as Fort Lauderdale, and over on the West Coast, I got a couple of texts from people that they were being absolutely slammed yesterday on the West Coast, up in my old stomping grounds, as I call it, around Fort Myers. But anyway, we had it here, but now a little mini cold front has gone through with not much to show for it. They're calling for another one on Tuesday evening, windy on Wednesday. And then typically Thursday, they said there'll be another one. So I don't usually look that far ahead because I know how it is down here. Things can shift and move pretty easily when you live on a string of islands. And a lot of it for them it's an educated guess, but it's still guess. So let's just leave it at that. So anyway, this is not going to be much of a fishing week. I thought I might go tomorrow, Monday. The reason I recorded this today, I thought, well, I'm going to take Monday and go fishing. Nope. 15 to 20 out of the north. Oh, well, I will get out there. It's like springtime's coming. Things will right themselves. So that's where the title of talking about fishing came from today. Tides and moon, which are very much related. The moon is moving toward new on the 12th. So that means the tides will get better and better as the week progresses. High tides will be mostly in the morning hours and lows in the afternoon. So falling tides for early fishing folks. And the water movement should be really good if you can get out there. You got a hidey hole, got someplace you can go, or you're down here visiting and you've got a place that you can kind of get to that's out of the wind, then there you go. Because the temperatures aren't, quote, cold front is not going to be quite as cold as what we had a few weeks ago. So that's good news, I think. It's been a much quieter week since the day after New Year's, and that should continue till about mid-January. Oh, there's lots of snowbirds back in town, but the real push happens as we get closer to February. So if you can get in here early, do it. Speaking from experience, not long ago in Kentucky, I remember that during the month of February was when I thought the winter would never end. And I know a lot of other people probably feel the same way that are north of the Mason-Dixon line. They're probably like, man, is this winter ever going to stop? And February seemed to be the month. And so a lot of people from up north come down that month. That's their escape month. And even if they're just doing a week or two, it gives them a little tiny break from the really cold weather. So they can go back and face the rest of Feb and March, and spring appears and everything's right with the world. So I kind of get that. But so right now it's not too bad. I was out, Janelle and I did some traveling yesterday out on a marathon. I'll talk about that in a minute. And anyway, it was, we noticed that the traffic was nowhere near as thick as it's been. So that's pretty cool. The fishing report, as I've already hinted at, there isn't one, not a personal one for me, but I'll devote some time to fishy stuff shortly, so we'll fill in. I have a little twist in the fishing stuff this time around I thought would be fun. Oh, should I mention, my non-fishing excuse was also not only the weather, because it was fairly decent early in the week. I had to go out of town. This is my bi-monthly cancer checkup. It was early this week, so that kind of throws everything off. But the checkup was good. I passed, as I like to say, and I'm good for another 2 months. It's fun living your life 2 months at a time. I've gotten used to it. And I also got to visit with my mama while I was in Fort Myers, so that was fun. It was nice to see her. I didn't get to see her at Christmas, so it was really nice to get with her and touch base and just chit-chat about the things that are going on. Also, speaking of Fort Myers and Lee County in general, things are looking better. There are still places that are a mess. I'm not going to say it's not, but it's apparent the headway is being made. Good grief, it's been almost a year and a half. It's a year and 4 months? September, October, November, December, January. Yeah, year and 4 months. So since Hurricane Ian, the outskirts of Fort Myers there, 41, that looks mostly good. There's some signs and things still missing, stuff like that. Some of those traffic lights are turned sideways still. One light's working and one might be out when there should be two, that kind of thing. But as you travel out, my mom lives out by Sanibel, and as you travel out McGregor, it's pretty noticeable that a lot of stuff isn't fixed yet. And Sanibel, of course, is still, as far as I can tell, a mess. That's what I call it. People are going out there. People are vacationing out there. There are things that are open. There's restaurants, stuff like that, but it is definitely not Sanibel. Certainly not Sanibel of old, or Sanibel of 2 years ago, for that matter. But these people are resilient. Fort Myers Beach is the same way. They're pounding away out there trying to get things right. So you'll notice that a lot has changed out there. There's a great view of the Gulf of Mexico from just about anywhere because it just blew everything away on the water. Margaritaville opened. I think I might have mentioned that in a previous podcast, but Margaritaville, the resort, opened up. And that is, to me, is a really big deal. That's a tourist draw. It's new. It didn't get pounded by the hurricane because they were in construction and they had put the bases down to a point of where the hurricane couldn't take it out. So the proof is in the pudding. The other resorts along there are really struggling to get themselves together and get open. They're doing it, though. Don't get me wrong, they're doing it. But Margaritaville is kind of a shining star now, considering the fact that most people on Fort Myers Beach did not want Margaritaville there. I think they probably do now. From an income standpoint and from people spending money, you can't hardly fault it, And I have been in several Margaritaville resorts, and they are really, really nice. So anyway, so there's some of our observations from running over there. What else have I got on my little docket here? Oh, good news for conservation stuff. This crossed the desk yesterday in an email on Saturday. The new Florida Bay Forever vehicle license tags have been approved, and the 3,000 signatures have happened. So it's been met. So now they just released the tag. They produced the tag and released the tag. That will take 4 to 5 months. And they will be available at the tax office and the tag agencies. So this is January, February, March, April, May. So May-ish, June, somewhere early, late spring, early summer, we'll start to see those. I like it. I will get one. I signed up for one, obviously. I signed up for the voucher. And I like the looks of it. I really do. It looks nice, and I think I'm going to grab me one of those. I'll be sure to let you know when it happens, when I actually see one out there. Janelle and I both have vouchers, so we both signed up. I actually did a video for them when we were visiting the Everglades National Park for their 75th anniversary. I ran into the gals that were at the table that were, promoting this thing, and that was really early on. And I did a little video for them, a little promo video about Florida Bay and how much I love Florida Bay. And so naturally, I think I want to put that tag on the back of my truck. So there you go. Whoops, I said truck. Yeah, I sold my Jeep. I got a truck. The Jeep was great. Don't get me wrong. It's not really good at long distance towing for boats. And I just finally made up my mind. I got to go back to the good old Ram. I've had, it's hard to believe this is the 5th 1500 Ram I've had. Gee, no, I don't like those trucks. Yeah, I do. This one's not fancy smancy. It's nice, very nice actually. The 4-door, the crew cabby type thing with all kinds. It's got more doodads on the dash than I'll ever use. The important thing is backup camera and tow package and tow camera. So when you back in, you can see the trailer hitch without a problem. I love it, and this will make for some more distance towing for us. We'll be able to go down to Islamorada more easily, and then on down to Marathon, Big Pine, and put the boat in the water and do some serious explorations down in the southern part of the Keys. It's just something with the Jeep becomes very tricky. Nothing against Jeep. I love that Jeep. It just wasn't meant for towing a boat behind it. What else? Book time. I finished the Matt Royal book, Murder Key, by H. Terrell Griffin. It's the second in the series. Pretty good, with decent plot. It kept me guessing until close to the end. I was starting to figure it out. I was going to go with another mystery novel, but saw a science fiction novel I had missed. Dun 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 dun. Yes, I like science fiction. So if it's well written, I like it. You might be familiar with this author, Andy Weir, W-E-I-R, Andy Weir. He wrote The Martian, that eventually became a major motion picture by Ridley Scott. It starred Matt Damon. And up for 7 Academy Awards. Didn't get a 1. That figures, though. Lately, they only give awards to the movies that most of us haven't seen, nor do we ever plan on seeing it. Until maybe it releases on streaming networks, and then we might go, okay, I'll give it a try. And then you go, wow, that got an Academy Award. Are you serious? But anyway, that's one of my oh wells. I've long found that very weird, to be honest with you. It'd be nice if the members of the Academy just went out and watched some normal movies, as I like to call them, some good old like mysteries and sci-fis and maybe even a Western, and then give it an Academy Award. So that's just my take on it. Don't you think? Anyhow, I digress. There was a second book by Mr. Weir called Artemis about the first city on the moon. And it was also very good. I enjoyed reading it. One thing about his books, this guy is a science freak, and he goes to great lengths to write stories that could happen. Emphasis on could. In other words, given time, his scientific theories and observations may very well be used or may very well pan out. And he's very careful about his writings. I mean, very detailed when it comes to the science side. And I really enjoy that. The new book is called Project Hail Mary. In a word, it's great. The premise is solid, and I love the way it started. Weir has a knack for grabbing you just right off the bat with a, hey, what in the world is happening here? That kind of thing. I'll let you know as it unfolds. I'm around page 100 about now, so it's really, really good. I think it's probably close to a 300-page book at least. But man, the plot's thick. Every time I think I know where it's going, it changes, which is cool. I like that. So there you go. I'm going to do a sci-fi for the next week or so. Project Hail Mary, Andy Weir. It's available on Amazon. My new book about fishing the Keys is coming along. It really is. I promise you, I've been playing with photos, and it takes a while to get all the photos that I want and where I want them. Positioning is crazy when you're starting to mess with a book, because once you do the documents and you have the whole final stage of this thing ready to go to the editor, you have to know right where the pictures are supposed to appear, what page they're on, about their position. It's a pain in the butt. I'm not going to kid you, but I want to get it right, because this will probably be the last book I do. I know. I've said that before, but I think this will be. I got other stuff to do now. I'm writing songs. Useless Information made its return to the airwaves, so to speak, and thanks to all the responders that loved having it continue on. It now has a home toward the end of this podcast, and once again, thanks much to Rick Church for the fun intro. It wouldn't be the same without that. And so I'll be at it. That'll be at the very end of this. Each podcast I'll be doing Useless Information because I can and I want to. And last but not least, before I hit the main subject here, Janelle and I attended the Florida Keys Celtic Festival down in Marathon yesterday, Saturday. And we did the same thing last year and decided to do it again, both because we're Scottish and Janelle needed to get some photos for posting on the Florida Keys and Key West social media sites. Success. It's always fun to hear the bagpipes, see the entertainment that they had lined up for this year. It's great. The people, the shops, all the tents are set up with all kinds of fun little goodies to grab. I found a really nice bottle of scotch. Wow. And, just a lot of fun. But people all having the same sort of, on the same sort of wavelength, if you will. One of the featured bands this year was Albanach. I'll spell it for you. Albanach, Albanach, from Glasgow, Scotland. And they have a piper, 3 drummers, and a didgeridoo player. I know that sounds wild, doesn't it? Yeah, when you say it out loud, it does. They play some of the most amazingly authentic, ancient Scottish tunes. I mean, basically banging on drums and bagpipes. Very musical, very few vocals. It's mostly just pounding out the songs, or the tunes, I should say. And it was really, really great. I have included on this upcoming, the Catchy Outdoors. I always do a simulcast, if you will, on Tuesday on that site on Facebook, and I will include a little short video of them playing. I got a pretty good shot of them playing, so I thought I'd throw that on there this week. So watch for that there. You know, the thing about the Scottish festivals, they're all really fun. Mount Dora's got a good one. Dunedin's got one of the best. Fort Lauderdale's got a great one. So, you know, if you've got a little Scottish heritage, you like the bagpipes, or you just want to go to a really great festival, those are all good ones. Mount Dora was really special. We enjoyed that a lot. So be sure to check these out. You know, look them up, and if you get a chance to go. All right, the subject. Oh, talk about fishing. That's the podcast title for the week. Let's switch gears right off the bat. I know you're going to think this is the Keys, but it's not. I'm actually going to talk about the west side of Florida, the southwest coast of Florida. There are a couple of fish that I used to love to target on the southwest coast of Florida in the winter months, and you don't see much of either of them in the waters that I now fish. I bet a bunch of you are already ahead of me. Just above and slightly northwest of Key Largo. I mean, basically, that's where I fish. I fish just due north of Key Largo, a little bit east, you know, past Card Sound, or in the Card Sound region, I should say. And then northwest, above Tavernier. Sometimes as far over as Islamorada, but not generally. That's a haul and quite a bit of gas. I can't wait to be able to tow the boat down there and put it in the water. That'll save me money and time, so... Those two fish are sheep's head and pompano. I'm going to start with this. Now, out of fairness, it's possible to catch them down this way, just not very likely in the upper Keys. Let's just put it that way. Yes, pompano migrated along the Atlantic coast, Broward County, sometimes as far south as into Miami-Dade, but mostly down into Broward from Palm Beach County north. Their migration pattern has a lot to do with the water temperature and cold front. So the cooler it gets and the crazier it gets, the farther down the pompano will come. And they're very, very popular on the east coast of Florida. People go to the beaches for this. They have special gear, which I own and I've used. It's really fun. You have monster rods, like 11-footers. That will cast way out past the surf line, and hopefully find where the pompano are running certain times of the year, like now. Really, it starts in these winter months. That's when it really gets good. And so I'm not going to say you can't find them. You just can't find them where I live now. Down in the Keys, if you catch a pompano, that'd be a pretty rare thing, to be honest with you. And I know it's happened, but it's pretty rare. Sheep's head, same deal. Okay, so it's just one of those weird things. So. I guess pompano's more around cold fronts and migration than anything else. I have yet to see or catch a sheep's head in any of the waters I've fished along the Upper Keys. Not just recently, but as far back as when I started fishing above Islamorada in the 90s. They just don't seem to care for the warmer water down this way. And they are oyster bar-y type fish. I just made that up. Yeah, man, they like that. They like that kind of structure, and you don't have a whole lot of oyster bars down this way. We have freshwater influx against salt, but the lack of that is pretty evident when you're out cruising around. You don't see the oyster bars that you see on the west coast of Florida, say from Everglades City all the way up into the Tampa Bay area. You just don't see them. It also makes sense for the sheep's head to not be here because they're winter spawners. The large ones come in to spawn in winter waters when the water cools off. And again, the water doesn't cool off that much down here, so I'm going to give that as an excuse. Now, I'm not saying people don't catch them. They do. They catch them way over on the west side of the Florida Keys, above Marathon and up toward the outer coast of Florida, the upper ends of Florida Bay, south of Flamingo, west over by the beaches. And again, really, you're getting closer to the Gulf Coast there. So that's probably why. And things cool off a little more there in the water. But the reality, sheepies are, in my mind, are native, if you will, to like the Fort Myers area. I realize there are other places that have, but Fort Myers, Sanibel, Captiva, Estero Bay, on down toward the 10,000 Islands, where you have large beds of oysters. That's where they tend to be. So let me start by giving you some tips. We'll start with sheep's head first. I thought it'd be fun just to talk about it and talk about my experiences with these two species, since right now is the time to go after them. And I know many people that listen to this also fish all over Florida. They don't just fish the Florida Keys. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of throw this out there. Location on sheep's head, oyster bars. If you have a oyster bar crowning, in other words, you can see the top of it when the tide's starting to drop, and it leaves water around the bar at low tide, so you have like a ditch, that's your spot. A lot of sheepies will hang out on oyster bars because they are crustacean eaters, and they are also, believe it or not, shellfish eaters. They will eat oysters, small oysters, clams. They absolutely love barnacles. They'll chew barnacles right off of pilings. Their diet is wild. Of course, once you take one look at their mouth, you'll understand why. It's full of teeth. Looks like incisors and molars. The name sheep's head is pretty much derived from what their mouth looks like. Those teeth are capable of not only pulling stuff off or cutting stuff off like barnacles off of a piling, then they have the crushers to crush it open and to get the meat out of the inside. So that's their diet. That's really what they go for. Small crabs, anything that they can get that's flowing in and out of an oyster bar as the tides pull in and out. The low tide is kind of key. They need water. So if you have a big oyster area that's drying up completely at low tide, that's probably not the place. I mean, they'll move there eventually, but it's not the place to look. You really want something that has a little water around it, or a foot of water, let's say, around it at low. And they'll be there. Trust me, they will be there. Best fishing areas that I ever played around in was Matlacha Pass, the lower end down by the Caloosahatchee River, and then, of course, almost all of Estero Bay. Estero Bay, you can pretty much find oyster bars just about anywhere, although the north end tends to be a little better. But in the winter, the big guys come in. You can catch them all year. Don't get me wrong. You can get I call them pan size. Get those panfish size. You get those smaller ones all year long. Don't be surprised when one bites when you're fishing for something else in the summer. But the big ones come in the wintertime for the spawn. Other location that I fished on a lot were just the nearshore reefs off of Fort Myers Beach and up off of in Pine Island Sound, up in the top parts of Pine Islands. That's not really nearshore; that's inshore too, but you get the idea. Offshore May Reef, which is a very common, well-known. I'm not giving away any secrets here. The May Reef is where a lot of people fish out of Fort Myers. It's charted. Everyone knows about it. It just happens to be piles and piles of oyster and rock. And that's a really good place to go. Average depth is 13 to 18 feet, depending on tides, of course, and perhaps winds. But the sheepies move in there pretty thick. There'll be days, it is a weird spot. There will be days when you get lots of them. There'll be days when you get two. I have no idea why that happens. I have never figured it out. It just, sometimes it's crazy and sometimes it's not. Most of the time it's about medium. It's not unusual to go out there and get you 5 or 6 decent sheepies out there. Provided you're not fishing behind somebody else. There is that. So the quieter days that you can get out there, like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, might be better than a weekend. Let's just put it that way. For bait, I use shrimp, and I like live shrimp. I tried to avoid frozen because frozen tends to draw in catfish, puffers, things that you don't really want. Whereas the fresh, I guess it gives off just the smell that the sheepies like, and other fish, of course. But rig is really simple. I use a number 1 or a 1/0 circle hook, and now that's small. But what you need to do is you need to make sure that you're getting a hook. I think one of the manufacturers call them Gorillas. They're thicker. The hook itself. Mustad makes a good one too. You want something that's got a little bit of heft to it. You don't want some skinny little wire hook, because sheepshead will just bend it wide open or break it for that matter. They are, well, when you see their jaws, you'll understand. So you want something that's got some heft to it. I usually use like a 20-pound leader on it. I only use it that high because, I mean, you could use 15 or even 10, but with a sheepy, but 20 will help protect you from the rocks or any other surprise fish that might come along while you're fishing that area. And there's lots of stuff that come into these oyster bar areas, both inshore and offshore. And then above that, above the hook, about maybe 7 or 8 inches, I put a split shot on. Split shots are numbered backwards for weight. It's like a lot of things in fishing are like that. A higher number is lighter and a small number is heavier. So a very heavy or a heavy split shot would be a 1 or 2. I usually use a 2. Number 2 is enough to get it down to where I want it to be, especially if I'm fishing on the May out on one of the reefs, where I need to get it near the bottom. Inshore, not so much. You could probably use half that, Cast it out, drop it, or just drop it down, depending on where you are, and then let it sit and wait until you feel the pickup and wait until you feel the fish move with it. Because of their mouth and because of the hardness of teeth, the inside of the mouth, the only way you're going to get a good hookup is if he bites down on it completely, and then you start cranking, and then you'll get him. It's difficult. I'm not going to kid you. You're going to lose. Well, let's see. Speaking from experience, you're going to get 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3 that you think are hooked and just pop off or let go. They weren't really hooked in the first place. So that would be one to the boat. 1 out of 3 to the boat. That pretty much. I rarely use jig heads. I used to use jig heads. I used to go with really small ones because they're typically strong and they come with a strong hook. So that was part of the reason for that. Is I didn't think that most hooks were capable of most small hooks were capable of handling a sheep's head mouth. But when down to reality, the jig heads are. Jig head hooks, even if you get a little 1/8 ounce jig, it's still got a pretty strong hook on it. So I did that, but I found that hookups are really difficult. You got to be quick. My youngest daughter used to say, count to 3 and go on 2. I think that's apropos for going after sheepies. You really do have to anticipate, barely feel the bite and go. Don't hesitate. Now with a circle hook, that's a whole different ballgame. So you can reverse that whole thing. It makes things a lot easier. Fishing with kids, use circle hooks. You'll find that they rarely sit the hook anyway. They typically reel when they feel a bite. So that will help you with the kids. So that's sheep's head in a nutshell. Now's the time. Get out there and do it. If you're West Coast bound, Southwest Coast bound to Florida, say from Tampa, Sarasota south, it's pretty easy to find sheep's head this time of year. Now about the pompanoes. Pompano. I got quite a rep for catching them when I was a charter captain in the Fort Myers area. I don't know, they just fascinated me, and I love to eat them, quite frankly. And so I started patterning them. Ooh, looking for patterns. How about that? Pretty early on. I've noticed that, first of all, they're catchable year-round, but they're much more catchable in the winter. And that's because they tend to come in really close to the passes along the beach areas. Mostly, I should say, not so much on the beach, but beaches that are close to passes, things where you got moving water coming in and out of an inlet. Prime example would be Big Carlos Pass that runs from the Gulf of Mexico into Estero Bay. That's a good spot. That's because outside the pass you have sandy bottom all over the place, and they love sand. And then you have that nice push of water in and out at that location. And that's true for a lot of other places. Big Carlos Bay under the Sanibel Bridges. There's all kinds of places that have that same kind of thing going on. Pompano loves sand because they're a sand flea eater. They love sand fleas. Sand fleas are this weird little crab that looks like an armadillo that lives down in the sand and gets washed out easily by waves and then scurries to dig itself back down. They love those things. If you can catch those and take those with you, you can get them on the beach. Go to the beaches at low tide when the water's coming up and lapping on the lower sand. Dig your hand in there, you'll get sand fleas. Put them on a hook, throw them in there, and that's pompano candy, baby. If not, shrimp works great. It really does. I use shrimp more times than I use sand fleas, and you do quite well with them. But the secret is sand. because of the sand fleas and because of what they do, they look for that. And if you're going to fish in if you're going to fish for pompano, you want to get in an area where there's a sandy bottom. Jig heads are great. I would recommend it. You take a small, like an 1/8 ounce jig. Yellow was always my favorite color for pomps. I'll explain that in just a second. And then you put a little piece of shrimp on, cast it out, and then hop it on the bottom. The trick is having enough weight where you're fishing, because pomps will usually run in 3 to 5 feet of water. So you want to have enough to get on the bottom, but you need to lift the rod, let it drop. Lift the rod, let it drop. You want that little puff of sand when it hits, because that's how they see sand fleas. That's their key to get on the sand fleas. So it's up to you to imitate that with a jig head. Yellow. Sand fleas, when they go into roe, as most crabs do, their roe is orangey in color. It's orangey yellow in color. And it's on their bottom. It's on their legs. If you turn them over, you'll see it. And so I mean, it was just like, why not? Yellow or orangey yellow is what I always use. Even a light colored brown would be okay, but I'd go more orange if you can. And that's why. So I never used chartreuse white or any of those other colors. It was strictly yellow. And if I couldn't find it, I got nail polish and I colored them that way. So yeah, it works. It really does. You look a little weird when you're at one of the stores at the beauty counter and you're asking the gal where you can find the yellow nail polish, or you get some funny looks, but it works. Fresh shrimp is best. Again, as I mentioned before, I don't think I'd use the frozen, and plus fresh stays on the hook better if you break it into pieces, but you don't need to use a whole shrimp. You can just break it into pieces for pompano. They are delicious eating. There are a number of ways to cook them. I think one of the coolest thing about pompano is they taste pre-buttered. That's the only way it's a unique meat. It really is. It does. I don't know of anything else that tastes like pompano. And it does have a flavor. So it's not a bland white meat. It has a flavor. Some people don't like it. So if you don't, call me and I'll pick up your pompano catch if you don't. I'm just kidding. I'm too far away now, but used to do that. You don't have to remove scales because there aren't any. And you don't have to remove the skin. You can cook it with skin on. Some people like to cook it on the skin so the skin crisps up because the skin tastes good. So there you go. That's your pompano tips for the upper West Coast. So I hope that helps you out. I hope when you're over there and you're doing some fishing stuff, you'll be able to get you a few sheep's head and a few pompano this winter. Okay, stand by. Here comes useless information.
And now, from the original book of useless information.
You are a reject! You are useless! You can get a job down here cleaning toilets!
Here's your host, Captain Rob Modies.
Well, he swears up and down he's useless, but
he might be all right eventually, but completely useless.
With useless information.
All right. Here comes some very useless information. Number 1. There's no such thing as blue food. I did not know this. Even blueberries are purple. Did you know that? And there's a shell on a blue crab and you don't eat the shell, but I could argue that would be an edible blue food because you can eat the whole thing if it's a soft shell crab, right? Just saying. Yeah, just saying. Number 2. Are you a coffee drinker? There are more than 100 chemicals in 1 cup of coffee. Ooh boy, yum, yum. It's not only the caffeine that gets you up in the morning, so there you go. Number 3, a donkey will sink in quicksand, but a mule won't. That's really useless information, I guess, perhaps for most of us, but you hang out in a quicksand-prone area? Maybe not so much. And there you go. That's going to have to last you until next week's podcast. Please spend some time outside if you can. Put on your mittens and hooded parkers if it's needed, but get out there. Fresh air is good for you. If you get too cold where you live, come on down to sunny Florida. Today's high in the Keys is going to be 75 degrees. Thanks much for listening. Thank you for all the support over the past few years. If you enjoy listening, please tell a friend, leave a review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The Facebook page is Catch You Outdoors. The website's catchoutdoors.com, where you can find all the previous podcasts and a schedule of what's to come. Until next time, get outdoors and enjoy.